All right, lads and lasses, welcome along. Dataset 8, video 4. It's been a ride, hasn't it? For me, reminiscing about the good old days with, taking phone calls, going on, how we used to gather the data, all that rubbish. We've gone through a ton with this, though. Gone through the writing a function, bringing in control charts, using it. As I say, covered last week what I really felt about this, how I feel it goes, and really where the value add comes. And the value add here is ever present really across Power BI as a whole. It's one of those things that the capabilities that it gives really expands the use cases. So someone that would predominantly be traditionally considered something very specialist can actually be leveraged in a much more general function and give, I think, massive returns on any level of investment that you put into it. Gone through that, did some calculation groups so that we can actually put together a set of measures that could be consistently called with any other measure that we had. Last week we went through, we did some hierarchies, highlighting min, max, both in charts and in a matrix table. And I have lots and lots of code written there on that. And then lastly, we covered KPIs. And one thing really important about KPIs is, of course, starting to go through and use good and bad display structures, which is what leads us into our next set of demos for this week. What we're going to do this week is kind of the thing, isn't it? So what we're looking at this week is more around finishing off a report pack. So kind of that little bit. So the first thing we're going to cover is use relationships. So I'll tell you what, let's get rid of this ugly thing. Yeah, let's get rid of my face, right? And then we can crack on, champion. So here we are, use relationships. This is the core thing I want you to see. We've got our incident table, and then we've got lots of relationships out to the people and lots of relationships out to the calendar table. So different dates that are relative to it. Now, this is something that everybody is going to have lots of, right? Across your sales pipeline, for example, you might have like a quote date, an order date, a ship date, a delivered date, an invoice date, a paid date, for example. So you've got lots of different dates just there, right? So it's really important to be able to manage multiple instances of something rather than putting in copies of the table. So let's crack on over into Power BI, and see how that actually looks, see what I'm talking about. All right, here we are, our in Power BI desktop, The main thing we want to do is we want to be able to build a chart like this, didn't we? So the top 5 customers for Sarah. So she's done some 2,000 tickets in this period. Is she doing it for one customer, loads of customers, something like that? So we just want to look at the top 5 for it, right? And we can see for her top 5, she's got this Amanda McKenzie, who's logged 21 tickets. So there'd be something we would want to do as a business with that. And that'll be something we'll cover next, right? But how do we understand? How can we get to that point that we can do that? Simple, man, right? If we go back to our views here, we can see we've got our main table, our fact table here, right? And then we've got 2 tables that are linked to it with relationships. So we've got our people, which has got active, and then 3 passives. And it's this passive that we're going to look at here, right? Which deals with the caller ID. And we've got the calendar, and it's got 2 passives. And the one we want to look at is this one, which is going to the open data. So we can understand what's happening. Now, as you can see from my chart, we want the customer name to be an axis. So if it's an axis, we can't use a measure. So we have to use a calculated column, right? Now, the calculated column that you end up with, I was getting back to it, is this one. Now, this is when you're using use relationship, okay? And because related, which is what you would probably expect to be able to use, only will ever follow the primary relationship, because to do it, you have to wrap it in a calculator, which then breaks you can kind of follow that. There are reasons behind it. It would be great if we could have related and put in a use relationship clause. That would be awesome with it, and that would make this much easier, because I think you'll agree this is a bit of a mouthful as far as DAX is concerned, right? There is a simpler way that gets you the same result, right? Using like essentially it's a lookup value. But I would always say if you're going to use lookup value, still make sure you put in your model view a passive relationship so people can see there is a relationship here to here. Otherwise, you're looking, there's a calculated column somewhere and it doesn't make sense as to how it's got there, right? Lastly, we've put a calculated column in against our fact table. So that's never going to be efficient. So what you want to be doing is left shifting that into your main M script anyway, right? But we're not going to that. We've put it in for the sake of this demo so you can see it. We're going to use the use relationship version, okay? And you can see if I come back to here that both versions use relationship and the lookup value give us the same value. So they both work, they both do the same thing, they're both going to have the same impact on your data model overall, okay? Next thing to do is we need to do a calculation. So the first thing I did was I noticed that we had in our DAX, the measure name was incidents and the main table was incidents, right? So that, well, for the sake of argument, let's change it to tickets resolved, right? Everyone can get behind that, tickets resolved. When we're looking at it in terms of how many tickets for the customer, we want to look at how many tickets were opened. So rather than writing the whole thing out from scratch again, we can use the portability of DAX and bring in the main measure again. So there's tickets resolved again. And then we shift the context by using use relationship, right? So in this case, use the instant date and the date from the calendar table, right? This is something that you will use an awful lot of, right? Whenever you're doing your big business calculations and you've got like an ERP system, especially ERP systems where obviously you don't delete from your ERP, right? You need to go in and you need to do something to flag, well, this row was a mistake, you know, like Ross put it in because he's an idiot, doesn't know how to use it yet, right? So you have flags in there. So all that business logic will go in the base measure. And the reason you put it in the base measure is because you can undo the logic and then highlight, well, I just want to see the duff rows, as it were, and do your analysis on those duff rows. Is there something happening? Is something being covered up? Right? All that due diligence piece is important. So the nice thing then means that whoever's going to use that doesn't have to know about all that business logic that goes into it. And it can be reused here really simply, and you're not writing your business logic out time and time again in lots of different measures. So we've got that there. We've got that, we can use this. And again, if you look at that from a sales perspective, this might be me quote date, this might be me invoice date, the sales date, the ship date, the delivered date, any of them kind of bits of information. So it's all important to be able to do it. And then that combines to give a nice chart here that allows us to see a different context of that overall report pack or this overall page in terms of how Sarah's been doing. We can see that Sarah has been dealing with Amanda's tickets the most. Okay. So we kind of touched on that, didn't we there? Layouts and themes. Now, layouts and themes are something that's really a difficult topic, right? Every time I've gone through and I've presented this kind of, we're getting this discussion in a classroom situation, right? It's always an interesting one for me. And I don't think I've ever had two be exactly the same, right? Core areas of concern are always that you've got your strategic, your tactical, and your operational reporting. Yeah. So what's happening? What happened? Yeah. And how can we influence the future? Yeah. Your operational, kind of like the what's happening? What have we got going on? I'm currently making this. I've got 15 orders in progress. Yeah. I've got 20 orders to ship today. 15 of them have gone, right? Operational. Tactical might be what's going on this month, this week. You know, that much lower level reporting, but it's really important as well to actually get into that goal. And then that strategic reporting. Now, those are all going to affect really who's going to see that report, who's its audience. You know, as I say, operational, it might just be the workforce that are going to see it. Like, oh, Kyle, you've got 7 boxes left to shift this shift. Right, left to ship this shift, this shift. Right? Or, you know, Steve, how many orders have you landed today? Yeah. You might then have the tactical side, which is like our team, where 80% of our sales have been completed this week, this month, that kind of tactical kind of reporting. Yeah. It's quite important to have. It's kind of straddles a lot because it's kind of straddling the operational and touching into the strategic side of it as well. And then you've got the strategic reporting, which is more kind of like board reporting, your senior management, and even getting into that forecasting. How can we forecast what's the future going to look like? Yeah. So it's really important that we can kind of focus and understand who the audience is. Right? Because, as I say, when we're looking at this, right, and this is the report pack that we're working on really is a supervisor report. I'm not going to get anything else about it. And that's one of the nice things about it. It's a supervisor report, but we've been able to pull what used to be the purview of very specialist people into something that they can understand. So we've got concepts of band here. This is in band. This is out of band. These days we're out of band. And we might look and say, right, well, why are they out of band? And the real reason might be as simple as, well, these are the weekends, most of them. But suddenly we've got this drop off here afterwards. We're going to understand that, right? And those might be where we're looking and we need to do some work to investigate. And that's why they're a different colour. Likewise, we've got the massively over, what's happened here, and going back in time might be, well, these are Mondays. So we might say, well, this might have been, we put a big change in over the weekend and it didn't quite go well. So, sorry, boss. You'd be surprised how many times I get things like that. You can kind of get the impression. There's things we can do, but we know because of the way we've got these reports being presented that if it's light blue kind of thing in this context, it's a normal day. It's within the bounds of normality. Okay. There's other things that we can do with these reports to actually move them on, but it's important to think, who is my audience? Yeah. So who are we going to be showing this to? What are they looking for? What does this person need from the report? So in this case with supervisor, they might need to be able to know which of my team are doing all right, which of my team do we need to do something else with, what's going on. And we know it's not going to be a senior manager report because it's got specific people mentioned in it, right? Honestly, there's nothing worse than giving a senior manager something that says that Sarah versus Anthony, this is what's happening. Because all they'll say is, well, we need to get rid of Sarah, right? But we've touched on this a few times. The figures in this case aren't giving you all the information, right? And then why? Why does this report need to exist? So in this case, this report needs to exist probably because the business has the mindset that when things go wrong, when IT systems break, it's a bad thing. And overall, it being a bad thing means we need to have a report that goes about it, right? But that's the reason for it. It's not a strategic report. This isn't the report that's going to help us show how we can change our IT infrastructure or how we can change our IT vision. It might well be that this data model that gets built becomes part of that discussion and part of the evidence that's used to help build a business case for something else. But this in itself is not a report to do that. And it's really important to be able to understand that the who, the what, and the why of any report is vital. Okay? Now, colours. Said themes are important, okay? And colours are important. Okay? Getting a good theme, getting a good set of themes within your organisation will go a long way. It will help build success because it drives standardisation. The other thing that you need to really standardize is your RAG status colors. So your reds, your ambers, your greens. Yeah. And you need to be making sure that your red is always your bad. Your amber is always your changing. And I'm saying changing because it could be improving. It could be getting worse. It's changing. Yeah. It's not a real state. It's kind of a flux, a transition. So it's one of them where do something now to bring it back to good. And green is your good. And just presenting your colors isn't enough, which is why your RAG status, for all it's red, amber, green, you might well find that red is going to be a cross, green is going to be a tick, amber is going to be like a hyphen or a minus sign kind of thing to say that something's going on. It's in the middle of changing it. You might color them as well but it's getting to the point that you've got a real consistent way of presenting data. Let's crack on. Let's have a go, have a look, see, check this themes gallery out, and then we'll go and have a look at the stuff in Power BI, right? So here's the Power BI themes gallery. Right? It's really good to get used to it. There are ways to write your own theme, and I would recommend that you do write your own theme or get your own corporate theme galleries, because there might be things that you need to understand. There might be corporate color schemes that you need to think through. Right. For now, what I'm going to do though is we're going to let's go and have a search in here. Let's find the high contrast. So what we've got is we've got the Microsoft high contrast theme, and it gives you a nice little demo of it so you can see the theme in action. This is a published Power BI report, so you can actually see how it works in interactiveness and actually how the colors can kind of blend. Yeah. It's now fancy, nothing amazing about it. But further down, you'll see you've got high contrast.json, and it's the .json file that you want from any of these. So just click the download button, it'll download arrow, and it'll download. And then if we're going back to a Power BI report pack, what we're going to do is in the view menu where you've got all your themes, down here, we could turn around and we could say browse for a theme. And then here, choose to import the high contrast one. Right. That theme has now been imported. I've switched to high contrast. So at that point, whenever you change themes, you might want to check your colors. So you can see some of them colors changed. It's worth having a look-see. Right. Consistency then becomes important as well. So we've touched on you need to have your red, your amber, your greens. Right. And that might be simple to do with this. So if we have a click on here and we look, and if we remember, this has got conditional formatting like we had for the other ones. In this case, I've got it based on the status of is it good, bad, or ugly. Yeah. So I could choose to have the 0 color. Let's make that orange. Yeah. 0. Well, it's not as bad, but it's still not good. So let's go on with a lighter shade. Yeah. And we'll leave blue as our other one. So we can see here, no surprise, 17% of these tickets were resolved on time. This one was 51, 73, 77. Yeah. And if we remember back to our stats, I think it was over 60% that we said, wasn't it? For the, is it good? Is it bad? Right. If you can't remember, go and check last week's video when we wrote it. It's all important because we can start to get this consistency going. So here, for example, I've got above band is orange, purple, and below band is this orange again. Makes sense. I've got the orange for the bottom line, for the lower control line, upper control limit is the purple. You're starting to build up this consistency. And that's the key, isn't it? It's getting that consistent view of reporting so that people that are seeing your report can quickly gauge, all right, I see these, must be related, right? That's really what you want to get to. Yeah, if we drill through and go and look and see what's going on with Anthony, we can see here, again, that we've got these consistent sets here. So given these are good and bad, we'd probably want to do what we did before with those numbers. So we could easily go through, revisit the conditional formatting that we've put in place. Sorry, in here and data colors, default color. And we can see we've done this with rules. Again, I don't know why we did this with rules. So we've got that there. And then let's have that. Go into that one. Yeah. Okay. So we've got that we can see really bad, not so bad. We could do something similar with the resolved day name. Okay. So suddenly we're actually getting to this point that we've got, these are the the values that we've chosen to highlight. Yeah, highlight, I guess, yeah, right? And it starts to make a lot more sense as to what's going on. Now, the other thing that this gives is because there's the filtering capability that you get, or the cross-highlighting, the cross-filtering, that's something you need to think through. What's the right thing to do with this for my report pack, right? And it's a really important thing to start to think through and to discuss internally before you make a decision, because it can be key. So not just are you driving this information, but what happens when people follow your information? So in this case, someone might say, oh, look at March. So you're going to click on March. All right, this is what's happened in March. Right. What does this mean? Right. What does that mean? Okay. Next, April, what do I need to do? And the ability to do that and interact with your data is a really powerful one. So themes, colors, build them up. Make sure that when you've got them, as I say, the bit we haven't touched on yet, is how do you customize your current theme? We can now choose to customize it. So we can see it has rag status for these sentiments, divergence. You see it's got text colors. You can see it's got all sorts of other elements that are there for you, right? You could build these yourselves. And then if you do more work and configure it, the last thing you're going to want to do is to actually go through and save your current theme. Okay. Updated theme. And then you can share that with your colleagues and then they can use that to create reports themselves. Okay? Champion. So the last part of these things is always around the Power BI service. Yeah. So at some point, the rubber meets the road. And where the rubber meets the road in Power BI in terms of how people are able to interact with your report content, what's going on, it's always going to be the Power BI service. Power BI Desktop, which is kind of where we spend a lot of our time as content creators, that only gives you one small part of Power BI. The other things you get are obviously dashboards that we haven't touched on in any of these courses. Right? Paginated report building, we aren't using it at the moment. We will be using it in the future. But the core piece around the Power BI services, this is where you schedule the refreshes of your data sets. This is where you set up and you define what's going to be in an app. And this is where you control who has access to the apps and what they can do with the content that they can access. What do I mean by all that? Let us crack on into the Power BI service and have a look-see. So here's me at Power BI service homepage. So I'll get used to this. This is the sort of thing you'll see. You've got me favorites and me frequents, kind of where you're going to be going back and forth to regularly. Got me recents again here. My apps, what apps are shared with me. And then below there, I've got workspaces and all the other stuff that you get. Some nice things that are coming with this. So the Teams integration, which I'll show you in a second as we get towards the end of this, where you can actually access this page via Teams, which is brilliant. To be, really roots it all there, removes the need to have to remember how to go and use the website, which, there's only so much I can do, right? Power BI service, here we go. I've got my list of workspaces. So these are my Power BI modern workspaces that I've got access to. What you want to be doing is creating content and sharing it with teams, right? So the easiest way to share stuff is to publish an app. So the first thing you do from your workspace once you've published stuff up is you can see I've got data sets and I've got reports. If I click on my data sets view here, we can see what's going on. From here, I can create a new report based on this data set. I can create all sorts of other things. But the main thing you want to do here is to schedule a refresh, right? These was no point in scheduling a refresh on these, but this would be where you would do it. Come through, schedule a refresh, give it a date time, off it goes, yeah? If we're going back to one of the earlier ones we did, dataset 5, now this has been refreshing nice and quietly ever since we put it in. So what we can do is here, we can see the refresh history and it's all completed, yeah? So we can see actually what's going on. And for them, again, in here, schedule the refresh, give it a date time to refresh, okay? It's really a simple thing to do. The other thing you've got in your report content is reports, right? These you may want to include in the app, which is a yes. If you want to exclude something, hit that, hit it to no, right? That'll work for you. Okay. When you're good and you're happy, you want to create an app. You have to give it a description. This is just have to. Okay. 9 times out of 10, when I get dragged into, something's not working, someone hasn't put a description in because it just doesn't look like it's what you need to do. Contact information, show the app publisher. Yeah, you can show a specific set, all these kinds of things. Navigation, which is going to be the home page for it. Workspace 4, like this week's report. Do you want different sections for them? Do you want all sorts? You can add information here. So you could add links to third-party websites, to something else, right? And at one point, we are going to do a nice demo with this with lots of stuff, right? Navigation, really important, working out that. Permissions. Now, this is the one that you need to be thinking through, right? So I'm going to add this team to it, or YouTube admin, right? Which, of course, this is where we store the files because these videos going up on YouTube. All the stuff's there. So anyone who's in that team will be able to view this report. The only restriction is going to be, did they have a Power BI license? So because we're using normal Power BI service, they would need to have a pro subscription. If I was in a big business or a business that had premium, then they would need just a free Power BI subscription. But that's basics of it. That will then publish it to them. Allow the user to make a copy of the reports useful. They can then actually make a clone of it and then configure it the way they want. So make changes, do tweaks like that, but they're not affecting the master data that's there. So they might be able to say, oh, well, I'm only interested in seeing so-and-so. So it could be a useful way that they would be able to tweak that report to work for them without me having to produce separate versions of the report for everybody. Allow them to share the app, the underlying, So you could tick that to allow them to actually make forward sharing. So actually make it available to other people. Unless you've got premium, I'd probably recommend leaving this off because there's now worse than, I shared it with so-and-so and they can't view it. They don't have a subscription. So potentially you're opening yourself up to a high cost. For all Power BI Pro isn't a high cost subscription. Multiply it by an extra 100 and you might find, that's something that's actually starting to have an effect on us. It's not an issue, it's one to be aware of. And then lastly, I'd recommend when you can, ticking this last box. Okay, in this case we can't, but tick this box. And that will really enable people to easily access the report. Right? What that does is it makes it appear on their homepage automatically. Now we've published it, we can go and have a look, see what apps do. So if we go over to apps, see I've got my list of apps that I've got in my name. Right? Now to get access to that report that I've just published, that app, I need to go to Get Apps. And I can see it's there and then click Get App Now. And lastly, I said I'd show you it in Teams, didn't I? So here is my Power BI homepage, and here it is in Teams. Hope you can see the two are identical. See, I've got all my teams on the left-hand side, and we've got all the teams, everything's there, right? We can choose to go through into Power BI, okay? So it's given that consistency even better, isn't it? Or making that even more consistent because it's putting it all now in Teams. And I hope you can see this really is the way Microsoft are keen to push it all. You've got chat in Teams, Power BI content works best shared with Teams. It's all about the team, really. So how do you feel? Does that, we've covered an awful lot in this series of videos, 4 videos, about 2 hours total length of them, isn't it? And we've gone into some real detail here, especially as we were looking into what goes into making a report, what goes into getting the right colors going for it. Some of the DAX that you've covered has been pretty in-depth, so I hope you'll all give that a go. Written a function in Power BI Desktop, which, that's a difficult one for people when you first start. Trying to figure out and understand what M is actually doing, what it's all about. Because it runs one command, and then that command, to run that command, it has to unpack more and more. And then that unpacking is what makes you think, oh, it's that. It's one of those areas, though, that the more convenient or not convenient, the more comfortable you are with it, the more you'll find you're able to do great things with your modeling. And the more great things to do with your modeling, the more value you get out of Power BI. The more value you get out of Power BI, the more people you get in Power BI. The more people you get in Power BI, the more reports, the more content, the better your business is going to do. So for the sake of you and for the sake of your business, learn a little bit about them. So we've learned things like use relationships. That's something that you're going to use a lot. Okay? We've learned things around KPIs, how we build them. We're starting to do things in terms of how do we highlight and direct our audience so that they feel, or so they use our report in the way it's been designed. And that's another topic that you need to think through. So there is that level of responsibility that comes with good Power BI content, which is in terms of what am I actually saying? What am I driving? What's the end result of this report? If you produce a report pack that's going to be used for a year, for 2 years, 5 years even, right? If you manage to get one that works for 5 years, come on, put your name, send it to me. We'll come up with a prize if it's never changed in 5 years, because reality for me, if a report hasn't changed in 5 years, no one's looking at it. So you're wasting your time doing it. Come, bring it into Power BI, get it automated, and then if no one's looking at it, you shouldn't care, right? But if you're saying, I spend 3 days a week doing these reports, they haven't changed in 5 years, I'm sorry, my friend, no one is looking at them. I wish I could help you. You know, come here. If it's appropriate, I will give you a hug. Does that help? So keep coming back. Didn't forget, like and subscribe down below, right? Honestly, the more you like the channel, the more comments you give her, the more feedback you give her, the more we can tailor this to what you need, rather than it just being about me and what I like to do, right? We can make it about ye and what ye want to do. Yeah. Some might say that's better than caring about me. You know, let's care about you.